Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. We are getting ready for week 1 of the NFL season. Yeah, you might be looking at this and be like, it's August. There's still a lot of time to be had before the slate locks, but there's nothing better than some early NFL talk, some way too early salary analysis. And that is what myself, my co-host Julian Edlow will be doing the next 30 minutes or so as we dive into the salaries that were released last week over on DraftKings. If you're watching this now, we're recording this on August 2nd. So obviously there's going to be some shelf life to this. Things may change, but as we look at things right now, this is what we're seeing here on DraftKings as we get ready to make our lineups. Julian, let's just get right into it. Couple of things to note before we start getting into this. I just want to point out some of the highest projected games on this slate, because obviously that's going to be into a factor in building some of your lineups. Cardinals and Titans, over under that one of 51. We have 3 games on this slate as we record with an over under in the 50s. Browns at Chiefs, 52.5 for that baby right there. Packers at Saints is the other game on the slate with an over under of 50. Obviously the news that Aaron Rodgers is back in the mix obviously made some changes there. But let's get right into the positional breakdown of this slate. So right off the bat, the 3 most expensive quarterback options on this slate: Patrick Mahomes, 8,100, Kyler Murray, 7,600, Josh Allen, 7,400. I think what is really going to be the story at this position, and probably a lot of positions, because this is a very highly coveted class, rookie class that's entering here, but a lot of guys are going to feel like they are mispriced. And when I look at this slate here, the first one that kind of jumped out at me was Jaylen Hertz at 6,400 going up against what is going to be most likely one of the worst secondaries in the league once again with the Atlanta Falcons. There is so much to like, I think, about Jaylen Hertz going into this matchup at just 6,400. When he had a clean pocket last year, 67.7% adjusted completion percentage. Obviously, it was not a secret that the Eagles had one of the worst offensive lines in the league, but had a lot of injuries that they were dealing with too. And they're going to be getting a lot of these guys back. Maybe they get something from Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, who was injured all last season. What do we see from him now that he's healthy? And then, of course, the shiny new toy in this offense with Devonta Smith, who we're probably going to talk about in a little bit here. But when I look at the whole landscape of quarterback, did Jaylen Hertz kind of jump out at you? Because that was the guy I was like, man, it is going to be tough to pass him in a cash game lineup.
Yeah, for cash purposes, yes. And I know that you're going to talk about stacking him with Smith. I think that this is one of the guys in cash for sure that you can play, on an island because of the rushing yards.
Sure.
You just look at the game log. He finished the season, the Washington game, 8 carries for only 34 yards, but 2 touchdowns, 9 for 69 against Dallas, 11 for 63 and a touchdown against Arizona, 18 for 106 in his first start against New Orleans. You're going to get points running the ball, and you're going to get them cheap. So this isn't a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's not on this slate. He's got the Monday night opener in Vegas without the hype, without the inflated salary. So Jaylen Hertz is definitely a guy at 6,400. And then it's against Atlanta, who should score some points against Philly's defense, make Hertz have to keep his foot on the gas, and just never has a good defense. And what do they do with their 4th overall pick again? They use it on a pass catcher. So same old from Atlanta, who allowed the 2nd most DraftKings fantasy points to quarterback last year. So yeah, I'm with you on Hertz. He's one of the guys I had written down. And before we go to the top of the board, I guess, which we should talk about, another guy I had written down, pivot playoff Hertz, 6,500, $100 more. You mentioned the totals, highest week 1 total. Arizona has a bad defense. Tennessee, despite the Mike Vrabel reputation, bad defense. They get a lot out of, and then here's the thing about Tennessee, and I'll say his name, Ryan Tannehill, $6,500. They have the defensive reputation. They have the running the ball reputation. Derrick Henry's legit, but they sling it with Tannehill,
right?
Who has Brown and adds Julio. They're going to pass the ball a lot against Arizona at home. Yep. I think that Ryan Tannehill's in a really great spot. Maybe Julio gets a little bit of the hype as the new guy, and you just bring it back with the guy Brown that's been there and been putting up the numbers and has a higher season-long prop for receiving yards. Brown is above Julio. I kind of like that for week one. And then to the top of the board, you got Kyler Murray on the other side of that matchup at 7,600, $500 cheaper than Mahomes, the most expensive guy hosting Cleveland. You can give me your thoughts on Tannehill and this one other guy that I have circled at the same time. Deshaun Watson is $6,900 hosting Jacksonville.
Yep.
The narrative could not be, or the public perception on Deshaun Watson could not be any lower right now. And who knows what he has going on personally. But
right.
If he's able to be on the field, if he's cleared to be on the field week one, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's a bad defense at home, a guy that can sling it, that has okay receivers. Cooks is a guy that can run it. Deshaun Watson at 6,900 is going to be a guy, maybe at least from an ownership perspective, people are going to go, I'm not playing that guy. And then you play him in a GPP and cash.
I really worry about Watson. Like you say, like he has some okay receivers. Like I think that's honestly just being generous. Like there is no more Will Fuller. Obviously when he was on the field, which was not much, not something you could bank on. That was kind of his security blanket. Sans DeAndre Hopkins doesn't have that anymore either. I mean, Brandon Cooks obviously is a great downfield threat. When he's healthy, he is dynamic, but I don't know how much I'm going to trust him against a fully rebuilt Jacksonville Jaguars team. I think the Tannehill call is interesting. I mean, that Arizona secondary is going to be bad. They are going to be a problem. They had upgraded at safety, so obviously that's fine. But you look at the cast of characters that they have at cornerback, and they added Malcolm Butler like that. I don't know how much of an upgrade that really is. I mean, no team in the NFL ran more cover one than the Cardinals last season. Puts a lot of pressure on the team's quarterbacks. And now we have the Titans coming in with Julio Jones, with AJ Brown, with Derrick Henry on the ground. There's a lot that you have to worry about on this Tennessee team. So with the lack of depth, really, and the lack of talent on that Cardinals corner, with their cornerbacks, it's going to be an issue. So I would much rather play Tannehill. The ownership is by far going to be on Tannehill compared between Deshaun Watson. Maybe Deshaun Watson is more of a tournament play. Maybe Deshaun Watson is that guy you look at in large field GPPs. But in the grand scheme of things, when I look at some of these guys who are vastly, feel underpriced, like, Jaylen Hertz, like a returning Joe Burrow at 5,700 going up against the Vikings, there's just so many other options that I would rather go to, safer options, I should say, than what really might end up being an overpriced Deshaun Watson. He's only $100 more than Aaron Rodgers. Like, are you really going to pay up the $100 more to play Deshaun Watson, or are you just going to go down and play Aaron Rodgers, or go down 200 and play Justin Herbert against the Washington football team?
6 weeks before the NFL season starts right now. I'm calling it on the Unreasonable Odds podcast, and I'm sticking to it the whole time. I'm not going to change my mind until Deshaun Watson is ruled out week one. Deshaun Watson outscores Aaron Rodgers week one.
Wow. Okay. Mark that down. You have a little notepad there. Scribble it down, the timestamp and everything that you made that, so we can go back to this later.
I did scribble it down. The problem is I don't know what time we started the podcast, so all the notes I'm taking for Samir are all messed up.
Okay. Going down the board a little bit here. There's some interesting names down in that low 5K range. I mean, Tua is 5,400 going against the Patriots. Tua at 5,400 really?
I have him on the fade list.
Well, please explain. I'd love to hear this.
What do you like about Tua?
Well, the salary.
I think I'm probably of the popular opinion here.
The salary is just too low. At 5,400, I think that's just too low. He ended last season 5,100. That was one of the lowest that we saw him since he took over that starting role. So really only a 300 difference from where he was to end last season. But I mean, you can't say that he didn't have some good games against the Patriots last year. You look at that game in week 15, 20 for 26 for 145 yards, didn't throw a touchdown in that one, but ran in for 2 touchdowns. And that's the upside with
that's
Tua.
Why, you're not going to get 3 carries for 9 yards and 2 touchdowns again. You take the 2 rushing touchdowns out, you're at 7.7 DraftKings points.
Well, I understand that. that, it's obviously if you take that part of it out, but would you
And
say
he didn't
that
play week 1 against them? So these good games against the Patriots last year are a dud saved by 2 rushing touchdowns.
But how good do you think the Patriots secondary is going to be this year? Do you really think that they are going to be at that elite level once again? I think that has to be a question.
I think the Patriots are going to have a very good defense. And I think Tua definitely got help. He had decent receivers there in place already, and you add Will Fuller and you draft Jalen Waddle, who Tua is already familiar with from Alabama, and plays to Tua's strengths. Forget that they've played together. Waddle's a deep ball receiver and Tua's a deep ball thrower. So I think that's going to help him a lot. I think Tua's going to have a better year. I'm not looking week 1 at New England to necessarily go after him. A few places I would rather go in the neighborhood. I would rather just go in the same game and pay the same price for Cam Newton, who ran all over the Dolphins last year and should be running again and has better pass catchers, the 2 tight ends, whatever at receiver, but you got the tight ends. And then here's the price range that I really have circled. There's only 2 guys in the 57 to 5,900 range, and that is Baker Mayfield for 5,900 at the Chiefs. Gonna have to keep up. And OBJ is back. You got the talent. The Browns are going to be good this year. Good running backs, but I think Baker Mayfield just has to keep up in that game and plays pretty well. And 5,700, if Joe Burrow's fully healthy, which we're hearing he is, at home against Minnesota, one of the most pass-happy offenses in the league when Burrow was in the lineup last year. I think the Bengals in general are underpriced on this slate. Mayfield and Burrow are kind of my favorite price point right there to get below $6K on 2 guys that could have elite week 1 games.
Not only that, but especially with Burrow, if you stack him with any of his receivers, they're all just too cheap. They're all way too cheap. Tyler Boyd, 5,200, Chase, 4,800, T. Higgins, 4,700. Like you could.
That's what we were going to get to. I was like kind of saving them because we're going to go position by position, but
okay. Tease. Yeah, that was a tease.
Those receivers are so underpriced.
Okay. So to wrap up,
now you just got to pick the right one, which is the hard part because I'll pick the wrong one.
So to put a bow on the quarterback section here, I am going with Jaylen Hertz. Who's your guy at quarterback? Who is your top guy at quarterback for this slate?
Oh, man. I'm going to say that I'm still a coin flip between Burrow and Mayfield, but it won't affect our build too much because we're spending the same price, essentially. So I'm going to go in there. But one thing before we move on really quick.
Yep.
A lot of news out of San Francisco that Trey Lance might just straight up beat Jimmy Garoppolo out of the gates, even though this was a placeholder. Garoppolo's got the job. Trey Lance, so young, went to an unknown college, hasn't played enough games. He'll get there. Apparently, he's getting there rather quickly. So if he is $4,500 against the dreadful Detroit Lions in week 1, and he's been running a lot in camp, the word is, that is a guy that you have to, if you can save $2,000 off of Jaylen Hertz, I know it's his first NFL game, but Lions are basically a college team anyway. That is a spot that I am looking to save a lot of cash.
And I think we'd be remiss to not mention, too, that Carson Wentz is officially going to miss week 1 and beyond.
Well, okay. It's August 2nd. We just got the news from today that he's going to undergo the foot surgery. Huge range, 5 to 12 weeks. If it's 5 weeks, technically you are a few days ahead of week 1 and could labor out there. I would be shocked. It's Carson Wentz. He's always hurt. Why would you force him out there on the short end of surgery? But just setting the table.
Something to monitor because Jacob Eason is 4,100 for week 1 now, going against what was another terrible secondary in the Seattle Seahawks. So obviously a lot to still get information about and see where this goes, but that is something to monitor as the weeks go on, because like we said, we're over a month away from as we're recording this. Running back. Sure. 2 running backs over the 9K range. Christian McCaffrey going up against the Jets, 9,500. Dalvin Cook going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. He is at 9,100. And then it's just kind of a big cluster after that between the 8 and 7K range, between some of the, more dynamic names in here. A lot of pass catchers in that range too, as well. Alvin Kamara's in that range. Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, all in that 7 to 8K range. Where are you kind of looking at here? We talked about how, the Browns may have to, obviously, I'm going to have to keep up against the Chiefs, but if there was one way to get to the Chiefs last year, it was on the ground. And Nick Chubb, who just signed that big contract with the Browns earlier this offseason, Obviously, he's going to catch out of the backfield. He is going to be that guy for the Browns moving forward, even though Kareem Hunt is still in the mix. But Chubb was that guy, even with these guys splitting reps essentially all throughout the year. This is somebody who averaged just under 19 DraftKings fantasy points per game, 13 touchdowns. I think Nick Chubb's going to be the way I'm going to go to start my build at running back in week 1.
I don't hate it. I don't totally disagree with you. And like all your points are valid. I just get afraid of, I mean, I think the Browns are going to be good. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think this is going to be a good matchup. You look at the playoff game, only 13 carries for 69 yards, only the 9.3 DraftKings points in Kansas City.
Yep.
But that was a weird game. There's certainly a path for Chubb. I just might save more because, like, there's different ways that Chubb could not be involved if Kansas City comes out hot, if Kareem Hunt poaches a touchdown or two or whatever, or if he just doesn't have a good game. And I don't know if I want to spend 7,200 on that, especially when like the guys above him. I'm not playing Barkley at 7,800.
No,
I'm probably not playing Jonathan Taylor at 8,000, regardless of who the quarterback is. If it's not Wentz, then maybe you go down early and the path just isn't there for Taylor.
But wouldn't if Eason playing, wouldn't that make you like Jonathan Taylor more if Eason is the starter? Like that's again, where obviously where you have to keep an eye on this, but that would make me like Jonathan Taylor more if it is Eason.
That's one argument. And like, yeah, the first 2 drives of the game, yeah, Jonathan Taylor gets like 12 touches, right? And then you're down 14-0, and it's like, well, we got to start slinging it. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but it's a good offensive line. It's a good, like Taylor, you can talk me into. Kamara, I have no interest in with the quarterback change because those swing passes from Breeze, like you're talking about like 9 receptions for 75 yards and maybe a receiving touchdown every game. I don't know what we're going to get from another quarterback position we got to throw up in the air. Winston, I assume it's going to be Winston, right, or Taysom Hill. Derrick Henry, 88. We're getting expensive against Arizona. If I'm going to play Tannehill and Brown, I'm probably not going to play much Derrick Henry out of the gates.
Right.
Dalvin Cook, 9,100. If you make me pay for a big one, probably going to go Dalvin Cook against Cincy. I feel like that's a good spot for him. He's just super expensive. CMC, 9,500 against the Jets. That's a lot. So I just don't know necessarily where I'm going to spend up. Running back's going to be tough. I might just play 2 cheaper running backs on this slate until news changes something. Like somebody's going to get hurt, and then there's going to be a running back that's $4,500 by the time you maybe listen to this in late August or early September that we can plug and play. But just going through the board, like, man, you got a guy like James Robinson that's $6,400 going to Houston.
Yep,
that's pretty cheap. You know, I like Najee Harris in general, maybe not the best spot for him to start his career off. But as you keep scrolling down, like a Mike Davis, 5,400 against Philly. Damian Harris against Miami. Damian Harris, I think, is going to step in to be kind of like a featured back for the Patriots this year. Yep. Throwing in this, the name of this podcast is Unreasonable Odds. That means we can throw bets in whenever we want. Damian Harris, 845 rushing yards on DK Sportsbook. Last year, he played in 10 games and ran for 691 and was in a like 3-man timeshare. 17-game season. If he doesn't get hurt, you're telling me he's not going to run for like 150 more yards?
Right.
I don't take a lot of overs. Running backs you actually take under because they get hurt. Damian Harris, over 845 rushing yards. He's a guy 5,200 week 1 at home against Miami that I can get on board with on this slate. Man, running back is, if you can't tell as I ramble, running back is really hard on this slate. Like I said, maybe Houston surprises people and you have a guy like David Johnson. And then you scroll down the slate and I completely forget Phillip Lindsay has a Houston next to him. Mark Ingram has a Houston next to him. Those guys apparently are in the backfield now too. I don't know where to go at running back. I know I don't want to pay up and I don't know where the value is yet. So this is a position that's really going to trend towards the start of the season. But those guys I gave out in like the low 6Ks, the low 5Ks, like that's the range I'm looking at.
Yeah, and obviously I agree with you. I think this is the hardest position on the slate here to kind of figure out who you want to use. I mean, really, after you get through the top 5 or 6 guys, it's just kind of like a lot of question marks around, really near the end of the board. I was kind of looking at JD McKissic just because of how many targets he got last year, but Washington added some decent receivers this offseason.
Right.
So how much are they really going to need McKissic to be that guy who's going to average? What did he end up averaging? It was 113 targets through 17 games. I mean, for him to realistically average under 7 targets per game, just under 7 targets per game is seemingly out the window now. I mean, he's probably entrenched in that RB2 role, but he really wasn't, that guy that you need on the ground. He was that guy that was getting all the PPR points through the air. And I don't think that's going to be replicated again this year. So 5,100 at this juncture feels probably a little too expensive, but if you're just going off the numbers he had last year, you might look at that and go, wow, I can get a RB2 that has that much target upside. And I just don't think that's going to be the case this year.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Running back is really tough. And like, as you scroll through the bottom, like, oh, give me a name that got minimum priced that we can throw in there. Like, I don't know yet in the early look, and we are on the early look. It's not necessarily there.
You want to switch over to wide receiver? You good?
Yeah, we can.
So
keep it moving.
So this is what I actually think makes running back so much harder, is that you look at the top 5 wide receivers that are priced here. We got Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Justin Jefferson. I would fair to say that all 5 of these guys are in like good to borderline like elite matchups. And that's what makes this tough. Tyreek Hill going against the Browns, Devontae Adams against the Saints. I think big question mark around their secondary this year too. Calvin Ridley, the bona fide wide receiver 1 now in that Falcons offense, unless Kyle Pitts ends up taking over. DeAndre Hopkins, what should end up being a shootout against the Titans, and Justin Jefferson going against the Bengals. So if I'm going to be allocating my money here, my salary, it's not going to be at the running back position. It's going to be a wide receiver. And there's so many guys that you want to pay up for.
Yeah, we just talked about, all of our troubles paying up at running back. And then you look at the top of the board here and it's like, perfect. If I'm going to play if I'm going to pay 5,200 and 5,400 for my running backs, I'm paying, 8,200 for Tyreek Hill and 7,900 for Calvin Ridley. No problem.
Yep.
I don't really, and like you said, I guess my eyes go to Hill and Ridley, because those are the 2 guys I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, if you're building multiple lineups, like you probably want all 5 of those guys sprinkled in, having like 2 of them in different lineups.
Yep. And the interesting part is, if we feel this way, that all these guys are in, somewhat elite matchups and, this is where we want to be going, where does the value come into play? Because that is going to be pivotal, that we're going to need some of that value there. So people are going to be paying for Adams and Hill and Ridley and Hopkins and Jefferson. But if we go down the board here, where do we get some of that value? And that's kind of where we were going at with those Cincinnati receivers. They are so goddamn cheap. Like, there's no reason why Tyler Boyd should be 5,200. Chase, I'm okay with at 4,800 because obviously the rookie coming in, but he already has that rapport with Joe Burrow. That was one of the big reasons why they drafted him. So I feel like, you don't need that, the preseason to kind of build that up and get used to each other. They're already there. They had a couple year layoff because of Burrow being in the league first, but like Chase should be one of those instant impact guys. So to get him at 4,800, feels like a no brainer. But Tyler Boyd, obviously, the production fell off at the end of the year once Burrow got hurt. Obviously that was expected, but when he was with Burrow, I mean, that was his guy. That was Burrow's guy, Tyler Boyd. So you're getting.
Oh, sorry. You're saying, sorry, go ahead.
So to get that wide receiver,
I stopped listening to you a little bit and got confused when I started re-listening.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for being honest, at least. But getting that wide receiver 1 with Tyler Boyd back with his quarterback and Joe Burrow at 5,200 feels like an absolute steal. So if you need that value here, but like you said, it's picking the right guy. Which of these 3 guys, and by far the lowest owned guy is definitely going to be Higgins. But of these 3 guys, where are you kind of putting your attention at?
Yeah, I'm kind of ready to write off Higgins, and I know it was going to be the popular decision, even though you can still get some of them. You can play two of these guys, just make
Right.
combinations of Burrow with each of the two. But yeah, it's a great spot to look on this slate. I think Higgins is the easiest to write off because Chase is just kind of the guy that he was with at LSU that put up those big numbers that they can just come right back in and get on the same page. Um, and they have the chemistry. They have the deep ball. Chase is super talented. I like Chase a lot, and he's so cheap on this slate.
Right.
I think he makes a ton of sense. And then Boyd can be that slot guy possession receiver that Burrow has the chemistry with, like you said, from the previous season. So I think that he makes a ton of sense as well. And like you put all those guys together, and you're still under $16,000 of salary
Yes.
invested in a quarterback and two wide receivers. Then you can easily, like you have those guys going. Then you can easily have Tyreek Hill in the last wide receiver spot and Calvin Ridley in your flex, and you got plenty left over. Like we're starting to get somewhere here.
Yep.
One thing I would point out, just like my, I don't know, maybe contrarian thinking on Deshaun Watson. If you go to Brandon Cooks at $5,300, just look at his game log last year.
Yep.
Terrible start to the year. From week 5 on, he scored double-digit DraftKings points in all but one game. The one game he didn't, he scored 9.9 against Cleveland. Got 6 of 8 targets for 39 yards. That streak in week 5 started with, Jacksonville at home.
Yep.
8 grabs, 162 yards, 1 touchdown, 33.1 DraftKings points. Ran double digits the rest of the season. Had a double digits again, 17.3 against Jacksonville, 83 yards and a touchdown in the road matchup in week 9. Finished the season, week 16, 30 DraftKings points against the Bengals at home. This game's in Houston. 42.6 DraftKings points, 166 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 17 at home against Tennessee. Give me some Deshaun Watson and Brandon Cooks. Everybody else get lost. Save your takes. That stack is going to do something in week 1.
I think one name just to kind of keep an eye on too as well is the Jets' new receiver in Corey Davis. Going up against a Panther secondary that has struggled all season long. They are going to continue to struggle. Obviously, they saw something good in Jeremy Chin last year. Just an absolute, he can run, man, but sometimes he gets a little too overly aggressive. And I think Corey Davis is in a really good spot here. He is definitely going to be the wide receiver 1 here with rookie Zach Wilson. But I think those two are just going to connect a lot this season. So I think at 4,900, that's going to be a really low price for him, because if he does end up being that wide receiver 1 role, this might be one of the cheapest you're going to get him at any point, because obviously he was overshadowed with Tennessee behind AJ Brown. But when AJ Brown was off the field, it was always Corey Davis that was shining through. And you just look at, like, you can almost always point out the games where AJ Brown was out, because Corey Davis just sees a massive uptick in his production. So if he's going to get those kind of looks in New York, and specifically here in week 1, I think he's a great value at 4,900.
I don't hate it. I'll close this out on the wide receiver position, I guess, with a pivot play here. I think Tyreek Hill is going to be super popular. I think Travis Kels. Did you see this in the offseason?
I did.
Okay, so we're going to call Travis Kelce by his real name, which is Travis Kels. We at the Unreasonable Odds podcast will start that trend while everybody else calls him by the wrong name. Travis Kels is going to be very popular on this slate. If you're looking for somebody else to throw in there with Patrick Mahomes and spend down, and then you pivot onto those other high-priced receivers or tight ends, Mecole Hardman for $4,800. The general perception on him is down because he's never quite put it all together. But now you finally get rid of Sammy Watkins, who we know is always good for 50 DraftKings points in week 1. And now that spot is filled by Mecole Hardman, who is going to get a lot of targets, I know everybody plays really well in camp, but is playing well in camp.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's time, he's a young receiver that's going to plug into the number 2 wide receiver spot in an explosive offense with the best quarterback, with all the attention on Hill, on Kels.
Right.
Mecole Hardman's going to have some games this season, and I don't see why at 4,800 in week one he couldn't have it.
Moving over to tight end, it is not a secret that Kyle Pitts is probably going to be the most owned tight end on this slate. You know, the scouting report has him as more of a wide receiver than a tight end. The Falcons obviously invested their top pick in him. And once Julio Jones was out of town, all the talk has been about Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts this, Kyle Pitts that. At 4,400 on this slate, it is going to probably be feel like a free square because it's obviously not expensive. And if he starts to get the amount of production that everybody is talking about, then why wouldn't you not? But for me, that means I probably want to be looking elsewhere if that's the case. Kyle Pitts is probably going to be one of the most popular cash game plays on the slate, bar none, because it's like I said, it's basically a free square at the tight end position. Are you interested in Kyle Pitts or will you be looking elsewhere?
I am interested. It's hard not to be, especially with how interested everybody's also going to be in Ridley. So if they'll both be popular, but there's still something to having a lineup with Pitts and not Ridley in there. So I don't think it's it looks like he's the cash play. Yeah. First game tight end. We don't do this often, but
no,
he's a legit receiving weapon. But if you can get any kind of pivot, off of a guy like Ridley being popular, I don't think he's unplayable in a tournament. Especially if maybe you want to go two tight ends, maybe you want to make him your flex, be a little different. Who knows? It's tough to see exactly where to go. Kels is super expensive.
I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. You can do it. I'm not doing it.
Travis Kels is $8,300, super expensive. Save $2,000 on Kittle. Sure, it's a good matchup. It's a guy you can look at. It's tough to see where to go. On the flip side, the Falcons are always awful defending tight end.
Yes.
So Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert's in a decent position. I'm trying to see if he played Atlanta last year. He didn't. He had a good season. He's obviously in a good spot. I don't know if I want to go with the New England double dip tight ends. You got Hunter Henry at 4,700 against Miami. You got Jonnu Smith at 4,100 against Miami. Meh. Robert Tonyan ended the year on a pretty strong run with Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
He scored 9.8 or more DraftKings points in every game but one since week 11.
Yep.
It's a strong finish. And Rodgers obviously back. Austin Hooper, $4,000 against Kansas City. The Baker Mayfield offense, good spot. Kansas City struggles against tight ends. I don't know how much further down I can look than that. Mo Alley Cox, 2,900. We don't know who the quarterback for Indy is going to be, but Mo Alley Cox had some flashes for very cheap, 2,900 against Seattle. A team that I think historically is meh against tight ends. I guess that's as far as my eye goes down here.
Yeah, I mean, I love punting tight ends. It's always a position most likely that I punt when it ends up making these football lineups here. Obviously, no real value really comes out to me as of yet. I was kind of sort of inclined to look at Jared Cook just because Justin Herbert loved going to the tight end position during the season when he had Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry obviously no longer with the Chargers. He's now with the Patriots. But, Jared Cook's a decent red zone threat. It's just a problem that Washington was very good against the tight end position last year. So I might want to wait on that a little bit. He's only 3,800 with his new team. Early report says that he's already have a quote unquote solid rapport with Justin Herbert already. So if that is going to be an area that he's going to be going after, might be something to consider as the slate gets a little bit closer. So just something to consider there. But I think, like I said, the big story here is that Kyle Pitts is going to be by far one of the most popular plays, not only at the tight end position, but maybe overall on the slate. I think that's fair to say, especially in cash games. That is going to be the consensus with that one. Any closing thoughts on tight ends? Go ahead.
Yeah, two quick things. I mean, number one, I just think, it's only bad chalk, if it doesn't work out. And I think Pitts is going to live up to the hype in week one. So I'm fine just playing him as things stand. The other thing here, I'm going to keep going with Houston. Can I talk you into punting here? Jordan Akins 3,000. You said they don't have receivers. So if they don't have receivers, the ball has to go somewhere. And he's $3,000 at tight end without much competition.
I mean, I guess. I mean, you're way too into Houston. You're way too into Houston for my liking. So if you want to play Houston,
if Watson plays at home against Jacksonville in week 1, they're going to do something. What are they going to get shut out by the Jaguars at home?
Yeah, maybe actually.
Okay, perfect. That takes us pretty much to defense special teams, which we're going to skip over. So we can skip it because we know that you're playing Jacksonville here.
Feel free to send me your head-to-heads. I'm all down for some action. So if you want to load up on Houston and I load up on everybody else that's going to score, by all means, that sounds great. So we can do that. Great. All right. What is going to be your way too early slate-approved pick for this slate?
Oh, I'm going to go a little. This has been the Houston podcast for me. So I'm going to go with, and I reserve the right to change my mind.
Fine.
I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks at, what is he, 5,200, 5,300? Brandon Cooks at 5,300 so that I can save the Bengals receivers for the rest of you and probably for you.
Okay.
You're going to go with Hertz.
Of course I am. I'm absolutely going to go with Hertz. Somebody that will score on this slate. Somebody that will get me fantasy points on this slate. Somebody I don't have to worry about, unlike Deshaun Watson. So Jaylen Hertz, by far going to be my slate-approved pick for this one. Way too cheap. 6,400 is not the correct price for a QB1 in what should be a much better looking Eagles team coming into this season. So Jaylen Hertz, by far my guy, is 6,400. What is going to be your favorite bet to make on week 1? We are a betting podcast. We didn't talk about enough betting. What is your favorite bet here for week 1?
Yeah, my way too early bet, and I'm going to have NFL best bets articles throughout the season, kind of rolling out throughout the weeks and just kind of add to them. So you kind of make the plays as we make them. I'll just make this one now. Like, I've been meaning to start my week 1 article for weeks now to get this one on the books before it closes at 9.5, 10. Road favorite of over a touchdown. Give me the San Francisco 49ers. I don't care if it's Garoppolo. I don't care if it's Lance. Give me the San Francisco 49ers minus 7.5 at Detroit. The Lions stink. They have awful coaching. They have awful coordinators. They're going to get awful play. Jared Goff's not a good quarterback. They don't have receivers. Go look at the receivers. Yep. And then you have San Francisco in a bounce back year. Go look at the injuries the 49ers had, and you'll see why they had the year they had. Those guys are coming back. They have an elite defense. They have a very strong offense. They can run the ball down your throat, which is just going to preserve that lead that they get off to against the Lions. 49ers minus 7.5 on the road. I will lay it all week 1. They are covering that in Detroit.
Miami +2 on the spread against the Patriots. They absolutely dominated on the spread last year as underdogs. 7-2 against the spread last season as underdogs, covering by an average margin.
That clearly means they're going to do it again.
Covering by an average of 9.8 points as road underdogs last year against the spread. 3-1. Give me them +2 against Cam Newton, who's going to last 2 weeks as a New England Patriots starter. This is the beginning of the disaster. They finally have enough of it in week 2. Mac Jones is in by week 3. Give me Miami +2. Just don't think that they should be underdogs in this one. I get it. New England totally revamped the offense with all the weapons that they have now. Not enough when Cam Newton's throwing the ball. Miami +2 against the Patriots in New England, by the way. That's mine. I love that one. And that'll probably be something that we'll talk about all the way through. And let's not forget, we've got a lot of 6-point teasers to talk about as the week comes through. So don't worry. We're going to talk about those because those are like literally my favorite thing to do ever.
I already have a 6-point. I have a 6-point teaser. I'll save that one for one of our future podcasts. I've already bet it. I also already bet the Niners. I got them at 7 because it was earlier, but I have a 6-point teaser that we'll do. Man, that was a weird pick from you. Patriots over 9 wins.
You don't like +2 from Miami at all?
No.
Really? You're just,
I'm not going to bet I'm not going to bet the Patriots, but I think they win the game, and I think they go over 9 wins this season. I think they're 10-7.
I mean, that's fine, but is that with Cam Newton or with Mac Jones?
Cam Newton at least until week 5.
Wow, week 5.
Probably longer.
So I have week 3. You have week 5. Are we going to make that official?
Mac Jones. No, I think Cam will last past week 5. Mac Jones isn't starting against Tampa.
No, not at all.
Okay. So that's in week 4, and you have Mac Jones in week 3. So now they're going to go back to Cam.
All right.
I got you.
+2 Miami. That's it. And that's also going to be it for this podcast of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Thanks for joining us this week as we went through all the salaries for week 1. As the season progresses, obviously getting more and more into the site, more and more into the betting. So make sure to hit the subscribe button on the DraftKings YouTube channel. Subscribe to us on iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast, so you can keep up with our weekly endeavors of what we're going to be doing for the NFL season. For Julian Edlow, I'm Steve Buchanan. We'll catch you next week.